Caleb Williams and USC about to get their biggest test of the season. Number 7 USC at number 20 Utah, and the Trojans are field goal underdogs in this one. Off to their best start since the Pete Carroll era, but this is the first ranked opponent they've seen, and only one more ranked team on the schedule the rest of the way at this point. That would be number 11 UCLA. Caleb Williams, top 5 in the conference in all of these categories. He's done a great job. Hasn't really been tested to this point. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this week. Saturday night, I think it's at 8 Eastern kickoff. Right now he has the second shortest odds to win the Heisman Trophy, but everybody is quite a ways behind C.J. Stroud right now, who's minus 140 and the clear-cut favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. Let's get Tom Fornelli in here. He's got bold predictions for a stacked Week 7 in college football. What is your bold prediction for Caleb Williams and number 7 USC?
Yeah, you saw there he's currently the second favorite in the Heisman odds behind C.J. Stroud. Well, he's not going to be the second favorite after this weekend. He's going to go tumbling down the boards because as we were looking at those stats for Caleb Williams, we saw he's thrown 14 touchdowns to 1 interception, and USC as a team has done a fantastic job of taking care of the football. But we've also seen USC struggle on the road in its 2 road games this season, including a 17-14 win over Oregon State. And we've also seen Caleb Williams in his time at Oklahoma last year struggle when he was under pressure. Well, now he's going to be on the road in one of the most difficult road environments to play in the Pac-12 and, frankly, in the country at Rice-Eccles Stadium. The muss is loud. The muss is angry. And I think they're going to get to Caleb Williams, as will the Utah pass rush that has been one of the top 10 in the country as far as pressure rate. And I think Caleb Williams isn't going to turn the ball over just once or twice. We're going to see a minimum of 3 turnovers from Caleb Williams in this game, whether that's interceptions or fumbles lost as he's being sacked or tackled. I think this is going to be his worst performance of the season overall. And also, if we look at his game log the last few weeks, while the overall numbers are nice, he's been pretty subpar in 2 of USC's last 3 games, barely completing half of his passes for about 6.5 yards per attempt. I think that some of the early season performances are overshadowing his overall numbers on the year, and I think this is the week where it gets kind of exposed to a national audience, and Caleb Williams pays the price for it.
And Utah does have a couple of losses this season, not at home, though. They've been great at home over the last few seasons, 11 straight wins, winning by an average of 23 points per game. Tom, the Iowa Hawkeyes are off this week, but if you want to watch a game with little to no offense, you're in luck, because the Big Ten West is still playing football. Minnesota at number 24, Illinois, and on paper, the top 2 defenses in the country. What's your bold prediction for this one?
Yeah, it's going to be another defensive struggle like we saw last week with Iowa. And Minnesota comes into this game ranked 5th in the nation, averaging 245 rushing yards per game. But kind of like Caleb Williams, those numbers are a little misleading because the last time Minnesota played against Purdue a couple weeks ago before the bye, they were held to 47 yards total as a team. Of course, they did not have Mo Ibrahim, their leading rusher, in that game, and Ibrahim is expected to be back for this one. But I don't think it's going to make a difference because we have seen it all season long. Nobody has been able to run the ball on the Illini in this Illinois defense this season. They held Braylon Allen, the Wisconsin back who's averaging over 100 yards per game, to 2 yards on 8 carries in their 34-10 win over the Badgers. And Illinois has played 4 Power 5 teams this season. They've averaged 32 yards allowed per game and 1.17 yards per carry. So I think that the Illini are going to hold Minnesota to under 100 yards rushing this week at least. It might be even lower. It is going to be the same kind of rock fight we saw between Iowa and Illinois. First team to double digits, probably winning this one.
And you might not need to get there like we saw last week with Illinois' 9-6 win. In the SEC, it's not often that we see an LSU-Florida game get overlooked like it has this week. Neither team is ranked. LSU a slight dog in the swamp.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why. I don't know what it is that people are seeing from this Florida team to make people believe that this is a team that deserves to be favored right now, particularly against LSU. I understand they're at home, but if you look at the Gators' overall resume, that win over Utah to start the season looked a lot better at the time than it has been recently because, as we discussed, Utah's lost a couple games this year, including last week against UCLA, and they've struggled on the road compared to at home. If you look at Florida's other wins, They barely beat South Florida, which is one of the worst teams in the country. And last we saw them out against Mizzou, they barely got by the Tigers, who are probably going to be fighting with Vanderbilt for last place in the division this season. So Florida has not been overly impressive. And LSU, while they lost to Tennessee last week, the final score in that game was a bit misleading because they muffed the opening kickoff, gave Tennessee the ball inside the 10 right from the start. A long punt return shortly after that gave Tennessee a short field. And things kind of snowballed from there. But LSU's overall resume, much better than anything we've seen from Florida. So I think the Tigers are going to go into the Swamp and not only beat the Gators, they're going to beat them by double digit.
Wow. Okay. Let's get one more bold prediction from Tom Fornelli, and let's go to the Big 12. Oklahoma just lost by a gajillion. Kansas has its best team in eons, yet the Sooners are still favored by 9?
Yeah, Oklahoma's coming into this game as a 9-point favorite because they did get crushed by Texas last week, 49-0, but they didn't have Dillon Gabriel, and there is a huge drop-off between Dillon Gabriel and any other quarterback on that roster. On the other side, Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels was hurt in last week's loss to TCU and will not be playing this week. Jason Bean is expected to start over. But Jason Bean came in relief in that game in the second half and threw for 260 yards and 4 touchdowns. And as much as I like Dillon Gabriel and I think he is important to this Sooners team, he's not the biggest injury problem that they've had to deal with. The defensive side of the ball for the Sooners has been ravaged by injuries. You think of the players that left in the transfer portal over the offseason after Lincoln Riley left, you combine that with the injuries they've suffered on the side of the ball, and they are very thin, and we saw it last week. They were giving big play after big play against Texas. Pre-snap motion is really confusing this team that is learning a new defense and isn't quite caught up. And Kansas runs a whole lot of pre-snap motion. So Kansas is not only going to cover this 9 points, Kansas is going to go and beat Oklahoma and win this game outright. And if you think Sooners fans are down bad right now, wait until they watch their team lose to Kansas.
That might be it for Brent Venables if that happens and they fall to 0-4 in conference play. Tom Fornelli with us here on HQ. You can hear him on the Cover 3 podcast. They'll dive into the Big 12 a lot more on the latest episode, including a wild Big 12 title race. You've got TCU and Oklahoma State playing each other this week. Those are the last 2 remaining unbeaten teams in Big 12 play overall. It's going to be a down to the wire, maybe even a 3-loss team gets into the Big 12 championship game. There's so much parity in that league this year.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.